If your system only works on your best day, it's not a real system. Welcome to Get Organized at Work. I'm your host, Kayla Fahey-Ahrndt, healthcare leader, mom of three, and your go-to guide for ditching the chaos and taking control of your workday. This is the show where we turn overwhelming to-do lists into clear, actionable plans so you can crush your goals and show up as your best self at work and in your life. Whether you're here for strategies to stay ahead or systems to simplify your workday, you're in the right place. Let's get organized, have some fun, and make this year your best year in your career yet. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to Get Organized at Work podcast. I'm Kayla, I'm your host. And today we're talking about how to build a rhythm you can stick to even on your worst days. So this is awesome. This is part of our consistency system series. It's the third episode in the series. So if you haven't listened to the first and second episodes, no prob. Just listen to those after you've listened to this one. And we're going to provide you with practical, relatable ways to have flow in your work, consistently show up without burning out. Ways we can create systems so that you can show up even on your worst days. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get started, I did want to give a little bit of an update. You know, if you've been listening for a while, that I've been toying around with the idea of having merch. And so merch is finally here. I'm so excited to share with you all. It's open for pre-order. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have pre-orders open until about midnight on, let's just say 11:59 p.m. Central. It'll be September 15th, which is Monday. So after Monday, the 15th podcast comes out that day, at the end of that day, I'm going to close pre-orders. So what that means is right now in the link in the description or in the show notes, you can buy any merch that you are interested in. And then on the 15th, once pre-orders close, I will place a bulk order for all those items and then I will ship them all to you. So just because this is the first time I'm doing merch, I want to make sure I'm only buying what you want. I don't want to have like all this extra backstock at my house. And so I'm just going to do it that way. We'll see how this goes. If it goes well, then I will have seasonal merch for the holidays and just things like that. So check it out. I've got a mug that has the Get Organized at Work podcast logo on it. I also have two different size notebooks, and you guys, these notebooks, so cute. So I got the products to my house because I wanted to make sure that the quality was there before I offer them to you. And I got one with a hard cover and one with a soft cover. So they're both like soft touch to the feel, like feel buttery when you touch them. The hardcover is really nice. It's robust. It's hard on both the front and the back, and it has the logo on the bottom right corner. Same thing with the soft cover. Beautiful. They are coil bound, so nice black hard coil wire bound. And then you can get the notebooks with, I'm doing either lined or dot grid, which are both beautiful. So it's a college ruled or a dot grid for the notebook. And then there is a tearaway notepad with the Get Organized at Work logo on it as well. And then it's just like check boxes for your list. So if you love lists, if you love taking notes, this is for you. This is your stationery merch that you've been wanting. So check it out. Grab that by the 15th, and then I will ship it to you so you have it by the end of the month and you can enjoy for the rest of the year. All right, let's get down into the episode. So like I said at the beginning, if your system only works on your best day, it's not a real system. Here's the thing. We're all optimists in some way, right? Like we design our systems or our ideal days or weeks thinking that we have all of the energy, all of the motivation, all of the focus. And the reality is we get sick, our kids get sick, we have to leave work to pick them up, meetings run long, your energy tanks, right? You hit the 2 o'clock slump and you're like, oh, yeah, that deep work session that I planned for this afternoon, like maybe that's not going to happen. And so today we're going to talk about how to build rhythm into your systems or into your day that helps you survive those hardest days. And we're going to be talking about minimum viable consistency, leader standard work, and micro habits. So let's get into it. Like I said, people will design their ideal day or routines. They'll think like, oh, my flawless ideal morning routine or my back-to-back productivity, it's not a big deal, or I'll have zero interruptions. And the thing is, these things break down at the first sign of chaos, right? And then what happens is that deep work session you had planned for the afternoon gets abandoned instead of you having sort of a backup or a fallback rhythm. So your rhythm needs to be flexible to allow you to adapt for the energy you have for that day instead of shatter. And I think that's what happens sometimes when I talk to people that I lead or that I coach. They'll say, okay, well, I had this item planned. It didn't happen because XYZ fire or because I was feeling low energy or this thing happened. And so then I asked them, okay, so then when did you schedule time to do it later? And they're like, well, I didn't. I just kind of like let it drop. And what we need to do is have a system that says, okay, no prob. I've got a flex. I can't do this right now, but I can do something else. Or I can't do this right now. I'm going to move it to something else. So I want to introduce you to this concept called minimum viable consistency or MVC. And I've talked a little bit about this on other podcasts before. But what is a minimal viable consistency? It's the way that we stay consistent by, I'm not going to say do the bare minimum because it's a little bit different than that, but it's the smallest version of your system that keeps you moving forward on a bad day. That's what an MVC is. So it's how do I still show up, but I don't have to go like 20 out of 10 or 200%. I just need to do what I need to do to get through. Sometimes it's about surviving, not thriving. And sometimes it's just like, this is the baseline. This is a standard that I'm going to hold myself to. And everything else is whipped cream or icing or sugar on top. Like everything else is the cherry on top. So this is a mindset shift different from, okay, here's my ideal week. I do all of these things, best case scenario, and it looks lovely. Because if we're always shooting for that ideal week, what ends up happening is most times you don't actually do everything on that ideal week. And we start to feel like we're not doing enough or we're not good enough, or maybe we're not doing everything we're supposed to. And it starts to creep in and lower your confidence. This way, what we're doing is saying, okay, our standards are different. Our minimum standards are these. Then when we do everything else that's extra, that's icing. That's amazing. We're doing awesome. So it pumps you up. It gets your confidence a boost and allows you to just be a human being on the days when you need to be a human, right? On the days when you are not a productivity queen, but you are a tired, normal human, this is the minimum. All right. We're not letting ourselves off the hook. We're not saying, I don't do my work, I skip my work, whatever. We're not saying that. What we're saying is we have specific priorities, specific habits that matter that we're going to do. And that's good. And that's good enough because consistency is better than perfection some of the time. Consistency at 50% is better than perfection once in a while. And that's why we're going to be doing this minimum viable consistency standard. So let me give you a couple examples of how you pivot when you're having a low energy day that makes me think of how minimum viable consistency can work as a system for you. So for example, maybe the team is having a really crazy morning. It's right in the middle of their huddle time. The huddle normally is about 10 minutes. Instead of skipping it, because we know how important it is to maintain this routine, if it is important, let's just assume it is. We say, okay, we're not going to skip. What we're going to do is shorten it to 5 minutes or 2 minutes. The 2-minute update is better than no updates. Or maybe project updates. You've been listening to this podcast for a while and you're like, oh, Kayla, I created a project roadmap. I love it. My ideal world would be that every week I update everything. I do a full board review of my roadmap. And then I send it out to all my stakeholders. But let's say your week went off the rails and you're like, oh my God, I need to update this roadmap. Instead of doing a full board review, you update just the top 3 items or projects and you send those out to your stakeholders. So your stakeholders still get an update and you still updated the things that move the needle, the top 3 things instead of the whole thing. And that's okay. Or here's a personal example. Let's say if your workout routine is to run a 5-mile run, right? You might be like, oh my gosh, that's so much. I did a 5-mile run this weekend. Did I want to do it? No. But my minimum viable was maybe, okay, first, I want you to just go for 30 minutes. I know for me, I can do an easy 10-minute mile And that takes, if I do 30 minutes, I'm going to hit 3 miles. So by the time I get to 30 minutes, I'm probably like, you know what? I'll just do 2 more miles. So it's the mindset that helps me get started. And that's like, if I have to stop at 30 minutes, I have to stop at 30 minutes. But three miles is better than no miles if my goal was 5 miles. So consistency at 50% is better than perfection once in a while. All right. So we talked about minimum viable consistency, and I want to tie it into leader standard work. So I always talk about leader standard work. It's basically the habits that you have on a daily, weekly, monthly rhythm. A lot of times it's your meetings, but sometimes it's things like checking emails, doing strategic work, all of that. And people don't like leader standard work because they hear the word standard and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be like boxed in. And what I want to share with you, it's not a rigid like checklist. It's not necessarily, I've called it a habit tracker before, and I could call it that. I wouldn't say it's a checklist like I must do all of these things in my standard work. I think what it is a plan of the things I need to do as a standard to feel confident, to make sure I'm being present for my team, making sure I'm doing my normal tasks that help me know and be aware of what's happening in my business or at my work. But it can be flexible, but it's also predictable because it's something that I do all the time. And so think about your habit tracker or your standard work not as a rigid box or checklist, but more as your drumbeat. It's your rhythm. So daily, my habits are I got to check my emails, and I need to work on my top 3 priorities for the month or for the week, whatever that is. On a weekly basis, it might be I update that project roadmap. On a monthly basis, my standard might be I meet one-on-one with each team member. And so these might be the things you already have on your standard work, the habits that drive forward your days, your weeks, your months, your drumbeat, right? Your normal rhythm. On tough days, what I want you to do is instead of scaling back your presence. So an example would be, oh, I'm just going to cancel my one-on-ones. I'm not going to update my roadmap. I'm maybe not going to check my email. I'm not going to respond to email. Instead of scaling back the presence, I wanted you to just scale back the depth at which you do each thing, right? So instead of skipping that meeting with your one-on-one or your team member, say, okay, we're going to actually focus in on the top things that you need support on this week. Or you can say, okay, I've got a really terrible calendar. I've tried to adjust it. I'm not able to. Can we just shorten it for 30 minutes and then we'll do email updates? So scale back the depth to which you go in on these tasks and focus more on getting them done, but do not cancel your presence. So the example we talked about with the roadmap before, I wouldn't just not update my roadmap. I would just update the important pieces, maybe the top 3 items instead of all of it. So just think about how can you take your leader standard work as rhythm, the normal drumbeat, the things you do every week, every day, every month, the things that keep you moving in your business, in your work, but to scale back the amount of time you spend on each one or the depth that you're going into it and just touch everything. Make sure you're still anchoring yourself, even if those things you're doing are shorter, simpler, or lighter on bad days, right? So we're talking about on days when it's just not possible, energy wise, time wise. You wouldn't just not go as deep every time, but these are the times when you've just got to show up minimally. So scale back those anchor items, these rhythms, to shorter, simpler, or lighter on bad days. All right. So how do you know like what you're supposed to be working on? Obviously, if we're this far in the series, we've probably talked about how to know what drives you forward in your leadership or your professionalism. But what I want to talk about is the little habits that make these rhythms or doing your standard work makes you resilient in those things. The things that are automatic anchors. I talked about anchors. So for me, what helps me is I always open my planner, my OneNote, or my Kanban board before email. Before I become distracted, first things I do, open those things. Even Microsoft Teams, when I do not open chats first. I open the items that keep the standard work in front of me first. And then I always ask, what are my top priorities today? And even better, what's my top priority? I've joked in previous email or podcast episodes about the word priority. I did research on it. It didn't become plural till the 1900s. Priority is one, is singular. So, what is my top priority today before I dive in? Make sure I know that before I go on a side quest. And then always capture at least one thing I learn from the week or from a big project. Like if I'm rushing from one thing to the next. Okay, what did I learn in this thing so that I don't miss that learning? Part of leadership is growing and developing yourself. So just making sure that you continue to have self-awareness, even on the bad days, the low energy weeks, or the times when things just feel like you're drinking water from a fire hose, you still have to take away learnings. So having these anchors or these habits of opening my planner and my OneNote or my Kanban boards, knowing my top priority and taking away lessons, these habits are like muscle memory. These things are consistent questions that I'll ask myself even when life derails my plans. So the more that you practice this, the more automatic it's going to be. So a leader, a professional who starts the day with this 2 minute, okay, what are my priorities for the day? What's my priority? What's one thing that I know I want to do differently today? Even on the crazy days, this anchors their mindset. All right. So just to recap, let's keep it simple. Don't design your systems for perfect days. Aim for minimum viable consistency. Everything else is like cherry and icings on top. Do these MVCs or minimum viable consistencies by pulling back the depth at which you go into things rather than your presence. Don't ever remove your presence. Just don't go as deep when you need to. Treat your leader standard work as your rhythm, as your drum beat. It's not a rigid routine. It's just the thing that helps you march forward. And then layer in these micro habits, things you do like checking your planner, your Kanban board first before email or before Teams, or asking yourself, what is my priority for the day? It's going to help you build resilience and that muscle memory you need so that you can stay consistent and show up even on your hardest days. So I want to challenge you this week. Design your minimum viable work rhythm. What does your 5 out of 10 version look like for you on your worst day? What I would love for you to do is to come into the Get Organized at Work community. It's free. Let me know. I'll post about this episode and some things about the minimum viable consistency. And I would love to hear what's something you do to make life easier for you when you're low energy, and how do you still show up consistently without having to pull yourself totally out of the equation by having this more simple system. All right. I would love it if you would join the community. It's linked in the description or the show notes below. Also, if you join the community, I don't know if I mentioned this before, members get a 20% discount on merch. So if you want to get some merch, join the community first, and then you'll find out the discount code inside the community. All right. Next week, we are diving into consistency without burnout and how to live that out at work. Can't wait to talk more about that. And I would love it wherever you're listening, if you could pause and leave a rating or review. It helps this podcast continue to grow. And when I get new reviews, I read them on the podcast to say thank you. All right. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Can't wait to see what merch you grab this week in the next couple weeks. Take care.